I've been using Codex recently to rebuild an old Angular app which uses Postgres and Ruby on Rails on the back end. And I've been surprised at how incredible the plan mode is at helping re-architect this project from scratch. So I thought I'd just highlight something I came across today, which I didn't expect it to be able to do. So just quickly to show you the app, there is a wizard in here. Let me just get rid of that. So there's a wizard in here that basically goes through various steps of building up a quotation. And I'm on this step notes, okay? So you can see that it basically goes through on the roots up here for each step. So this is step notes, which needs to be built. I'll go back to the original application. There's a screenshot somewhere here. So include notes, so you can see there's the stepper here, the step numbering was wrong. And for this section, basically allows the user to have a free text area input to put some notes in, which then get added to the bottom of the quotation. And then there are some questions here. Now these questions are only related to the user if they've selected a certain type of product, and that type of product is a wood product. In other words, wood flooring. This is a flooring application. If they select carpet or tiles or something up, these switches, these options shouldn't appear, but when they do appear and you answer them, it adds things like these installation guidelines. So we go back to Codex. I gave it a lot of context already as to got agents files, there's MD files with the architecture and things like that, but it's not extensive. So I thought I'd do a one-shot prompt and see if it was able to cope with this fairly simple task. So I've actually dropped into the repo, if I go to the code, the old front end. So the old front end is in here in a hidden folder. It knows that now. Well, it should know that. So simple question, analyze the step notes in the, I actually got the step wrong. It's actually called assign notes as it's pointed out here. But anyway, in the old Floorbook front end folder, and it's in a folder called proposal builder inside that application. And I put in brackets just to remind it that it's Angular code. Make a plan on what we need to add to this rebuild. So it then talks through the plan. So I'll inspect the old Angular proposal builder notes step first, compare it to the current rebuild placeholder. So the plan is grounded in what exists. So that's what you'd expect it to do, because obviously we already have this kind of placeholder step notes here. So I want it to flesh this out. So it found the old component and the placeholder. It's reading those, the old document rendering and building routing, so you can plan the step in context. Great, okay. It notices that it's small. It's basically a free text plus three guideline toggles. So it's recognized the old UI, which is great. And then the old document renders notes as an additional note section and uses the three toggles to include installation guidelines. So it recognizes the business logic, the functionality that applies. It's also, where do we get to it? Noticed that the current rebuild that we're doing doesn't have any support for this. It's just a placeholder, and it recognizes that that's the previous step that it ends on. So it's talking here about this view when we render, and it's noticed that it ends at the VAT section and doesn't include what we see in the old view of the guidelines, for example. So it's recognizing that as well. Now it's looked at the database schema. Notice in the prompt, I didn't tell it to do that. I'm expecting it to know from my architecture and the context that we've already been working on to do that. So it's checking that the schema already has a field for the notes and the three flags that trigger those switches in the UI. So it's recognised we don't need a database migration, which is great. Now it's going to look at the API, the update endpoint patterns, so it can figure out if it can reuse an existing patch in order to save what the user inputs. So it's noticed that there's no branch for that routing in the API, and it's now going to check the logic and the placeholder. Now, I actually here unexpectedly identified a bug in the original code. And it's saying that the old Angular UI only showed the questions when the last product that was added was wood. So just to explain that, you can see here that this quote has got a carpet, another carpet, and another carpet. And what it's saying is, in the old code, if one of the first products was wood, those questions would never get asked, and they should be, because the old bug was, it was only if the final product that you added to the quote was wood, it was only looking at that product and then asking those questions about that product. But if a previous product was wood and then you added carpet, it wouldn't show those very important questions to the user. So it's actually identified a bug in the old code, and it points out it seems accidental in a multi-product flow. And indeed, it was accidental. So that was a nice surprise. And now at that point, unfortunately, I only filmed this after, because at this point in the plan, it actually asked me a question to confirm that that was accidental, and that in this new multi-product flow, what is the rule? And in this rebuild, it actually presented 3 different options for the rule, which really surprised me. Unfortunately, I didn't capture it. And I answered to say, install wood product anywhere on the quote. In other words, the switch rule should apply regardless of when you add a wood-based product. Now it's doing one last check, and then it's just confirming that it will be step 6 in the flow, whereas in the old flow it was step 11, because obviously this is a rebuild, so we streamlined everything. And it's saying that, the done step is 6, so it'll include this as step 5, with an optional next to advance to step 6, and it will add a done route, which will be a placeholder. I didn't ask it to do that, but it's learned already from this quite long session. As you can see, I can go back quite a long way in this session. It's already compacted the context one. So once I'm done with this, I'll probably end this and start a new session, because this has got really quite long. But a couple of surprises there in how Codex was able to analyze the old code in plan mode, spot that bug, confirm database schema, routing, everything that it needed from just a very, very small prompt. And now it's come up with a plan. I won't bore you by going through the entire plan, but it's 100% dead on. I used to use Copilot, and I tried Cursor, didn't really like it. I've used Claude Code, Gemini, and I've been getting into Codex recently, and this plan mode is just superb. And the implementation, when you implement it, is actually also superb. And this might now be my go-to tool for coding. What do you guys think? Or what are you using? Anyone tried Codex? Let me know in the comments. Thanks a lot.